Good morning, and thank you, Dean Warner. We'll get right into it. So today's itinerary, we're going to start with an overview of the cruise industry. I recognize that this is not a segment of the marine industry that gets a lot of focus here at Webb. So we'll start with contextualizing what is the cruise industry. And then I'll pass it over to Dan, who will talk about roles within our marine operations teams. And then he'll have a segment on our decarbonization efforts. And then I'll pick back up with roles within the new builds and refurbishment team. And then Carrie will close us out with how you can join the excitement at Carnival with some opportunities that are coming up this winter, as well as after graduation. And then hopefully, at the end, we'll have time for questions or lunch, whichever comes first. So, first off, how many of you, by show of hands, have taken a family vacation? All right, now keep those hands up if your family vacation went to a land destination. Maybe you went to a national park. Maybe you went to an amusement park, a foreign country. Okay, and now hands for the people that have taken a cruise as a family vacation. Yep, that pretty much sums it up for our industry. It's an industry that has plenty of opportunity for growth because at the end of the day, the cruise industry only represents about 2% of the travel and tourism sector. Another way to think about it, if you were to add up all the hotel rooms in the world and added cruise ships into that, you'd have about 2% of the world's hotel rooms are represented by cruise ships. So our competition is not going on different cruise lines. Our competition is all of you that had your hands up at the beginning that didn't decide to take a family vacation on your cruise. So that said, it's an industry that's strong and resilient. There's been consistent and steady growth over the last 50 years. And in fact, bouncing out of the pandemic, cruising, once we were allowed to restart operations, had a very fast rebound and has continued to enjoy very high numbers of passengers. And we'll look at that in just a moment. It's an industry with an international footprint. Our passengers come from and travel to all over the world. It's an industry that's focused on innovation and sustainability. Obviously, we're driven to exceed our guest expectations, which leads us to create new experiences on board our ships, but we're also driven to develop more efficient ships. And again, Dan will touch on some of our sustainability efforts in a bit. And it's an industry that's committed to new ocean-going ships. And I think this is something that is unique about the cruise industry. We have 56 ships on order worth almost $40 billion, and that's just through 2028. There are more ships that are already announced beyond 2028 for Carnival and other brands in the industry. So it's a very broad, exciting, and fast-paced industry. And we get to have a lot of fun. So, another pop quiz question. How many passengers do you think cruised in 2023? Shout it out, anybody. 10 million. 10 million. 10 million going once.
55 million.
55 million. I would really like that number because our bonuses would be a lot better. A little bit in between. So 31.7 was the 2023 number, and this is coming from CLIA, which is an industry trade group for the cruise lines. And you can see the numbers have grown even from 2019, which at the time was considered a high water year. Obviously, a lot has happened between 2019 and 2023, but this table breaks down the source markets. So you can see the largest number of passengers are coming from the US, from North America, followed closely by Europe, and then smaller markets in Australasia and South America. But again, all of that to highlight the tremendous opportunity for growth. And in fact, CLIA is projecting by 2027, we'll see about 39 or almost 40 million passengers globally. And looking at that, where do people go? So I know a couple weeks ago we were talking about Queen Mary 2 here. So 4.4%, that's those transatlantics and other world-type voyages. But the largest market for passengers by number is the Caribbean, which makes sense. Everybody's looking to go to their slice of paradise. But the market's very strong in the Mediterranean, over in Europe, and another area that's grown quite a bit is Alaska. A lot of people like to go to Alaska by ship. So shifting from the industry globally, who is Carnival? Carnival Corporation and PLC is the largest operator of cruises. We have a portfolio of 9 brands that span everything from Carnival all the way up to the ultra-luxury Seabourn. It's a corporate fleet of about 94 ships, and we're traveling to over 800 ports worldwide. It's 160,000 team members, both shipboard and shoreside in our company, representing 150 countries. And last year, we served nearly 12.5 million guests, just about half of the overall global cruise market. And our mission is very clear. We seek to deliver unforgettable happiness to our guests by providing extraordinary cruise vacations while honoring the integrity of every ocean we sail, place we visit, and life we touch. And to that extent, we are leading in the way of sustainable cruising by promoting positive climate action, contributing to a circular economy, partnering with the communities we sail from and to, and also reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, focusing specifically on Carnival Cruise Line, since we're going to be talking about roles within Carnival Cruise Line, one of the 9 brands, this is a basic org chart, and it's all of the departments you would expect: commercial, marketing, HR, finance. But the ones that are very specific to our world are our hotel operations, our marine operations, and new builds and refurbishments. That's really the marine side of the company. And today we'll focus on marine operations and new builds and refurbishments. So with that, I'll pass it over to Dan to talk about marine operations.
Morning, everybody. As Hampton said, I'll go through my time at Carnival in the marine operations side. So this is what you can think of the side of the company that runs the ships and the technical side of the ship operation. All right. So what makes up technical operations at Carnival? At a typical cargo company, it might be a few people that run the ships, a ship superintendent, maybe a few SMEs. Whereas for Carnival, technical operations is made up of the operations managers, what you might think of as your typical ship superintendent. We have a group focused on the electrical, subject matter experts, environmental, those that are dedicated to making sure that our ships are stewards of the environment. The deck and safety department, this is your life-saving equipment, your firefighting equipment, as well as handling the stability of the ships. You have technical documentation. They are focused on making sure we have all the CAD drawings for the ships, updating those drawings, the manuals for the vessels. We have a team focused on engines and all the maintenance for our engines on board, hotel maintenance, self-explanatory, the travel team, which handles getting all of our contractors and those people that work on our ships to the ships from the contractor standpoint, not crew. That's separate within the organization. The department that I fall under, which is HVAC and hotel, technical, which is your galley and your laundry. You have fuel and decarbonization, so the people that make sure our ships are running as energy efficient as possible, plus other teams. So quite a large organization. I think it's 80 people in total, thereabouts, that make up this part of our company. So what were my roles within Carnival? When I joined in 2018, I joined the deck and safety team, and focusing on, like I said, lifeboats, the davits, and various other life-saving appliances. Our ships might have up to 30 lifeboats, so a little bit different than a container ship. And now I'm a project manager for technical programs where I oversee a varied scope of work. So what is asset management? Maybe some of you are familiar with it, others it might be newer to. Marine asset management is the process of maintaining and sustaining an asset through its life cycle. The goal is to keep that asset, whether, like I said, it could be electrical, it could be environmental asset, it could be a safety asset. You want it to perform effectively throughout its life cycle. So a little bit more detail. When I joined Carnival, I strictly focused on our dry dock work. I lost count of how many dry docks I've been to, probably somewhere in the region of 20 dry docks throughout the world. So one of the great parts about Carnival is if you like to travel, you'll be doing quite a bit of it with our organization, depending on the department. So I started with dry docks for our entire fleet. At that time, we had roughly 23 ships in the fleet, and then that transitioned to working on one class of ship, but more holistic view of the ship, from the lifeboats, the life rafts, the davits, and the fixed firefighting equipment. Okay, and then right before the famous 2020 COVID pause, I transitioned to project manager in our technical programs. And my first new project was max occupancy, which I'll get into a little bit later. And then hotel technical systems, and finally where I find myself now, working on hydrodynamics projects, lighting projects, as well as waste heat recovery. So max occupancy program, what is it? Because it's a fancy name for something that isn't overly complicated. The idea was, how do we increase the number of people we have on our ships? A ship is kind of, you can have a number of people based on how many life rafts and lifeboats you have. How far offshore the ship is going plays into it, as well as how much capacity you have for berths for the people, and how many people can fit in the dining room also plays into this. So my role was I managed the technical and the life-saving part of this program, and had the opportunity to see it from beginning to end. By the beginning, I mean the feasibility study, working with the various departments within Carnival, doing a HAZID, which is another name for a risk assessment, a large risk assessment, finding design review, approvals with class societies and flag, and then implementing that. So on this ship here, you can see in the center you have this smaller lifeboat. It holds 150 people. These are our smaller lifeboats. And what we did was we replaced some of those on this ship with these larger tender boats for the specific operation the ship was working. So this is an exciting project. We accomplished it in less time than the project should actually take. You know, Carnival cruise ship dry docks are much shorter than in the commercial world. You might see 60 days for a commercial dry dock. For us, it can be 2 weeks, a month. 40 days would be really long. So this project was done in less than a month, moving ship structure around, playing with the interior of the ship to make this work. And then post-COVID, after our ships restarted, I was part of the team getting the ships operational again. And part of that is the replacement of laundry and galley equipment. As you might imagine, on a ship of this size, where you could have up to now over 5,000 passengers, these parts of the ship are extensive, not like our home laundries. So this was major replacements for the vessels. All right. Talking a little bit on decarbonization, I'll run through what our team as a whole does, the fuel and decarb team, and then a little bit about how I play into that. All right, so one of Carnival goals is pursuing net zero greenhouse gas emissions from ship operations by 2050. And how are we going to do this? Through a number of various ways. Fleet optimization. We can deliver larger, more efficient ships as part of our ongoing new build program. Energy efficiency. We continue to improve our existing ships, implementing new projects on board, such as service power packages, air lubrication systems, and expanding shore power capabilities to take advantage of onshore greener energy production. Itinerary efficiency, we can design more efficient routes for our ships to go with our passengers and investigate new ports and building destinations for our passengers that may be closer to the home port, such as maybe you've seen in the news, Carnival Celebration Key. Finally, new technologies and alternative fuels, self-explanatory. All right, diving a little bit deeper into some of the items that our team works on. I'll go through a few of these. There's a bunch on the list, but one of them that I'm involved in is service power packages. This is a fancy name for a piece that kind of encapsulates many different projects. First and foremost, it looks at the HVAC automation of the ship, which after propulsion is probably our largest consumer of power on our ship. So we want to upgrade the automation to make sure that that runs as efficiently as possible, as well as install better lighting systems and remote monitoring and operation, optimization of energy usage and performance. So from that we can save, anywhere from 5 to 5 to 10% of our consumed power on board, so quite a large piece there. Another area is improving the hull. This might be changing the hull form itself, putting on a new bow or a new ducktail on the stern, and as well as smaller items that we can take advantage of, but still play a really large role, like keeping the hull clean. So here's an ROV that Carnival has partnered with this organization for hull cleaning. You know, ROVs, as you might imagine, are obviously optimal to a diver in the water, right? You're not limited on current. A diver gets tired, an ROV doesn't. We're not limited on visibility of the water. Many of the ports we operate in, maybe a diver can't really see more than, you know, a foot in front of their face. So we can keep our hulls clean this way. It sounds kind of boring, right? What does it really matter to scrape the bottom of the ship? Maybe you do it on your sailboat before you go racing, you clean the bottom. Some of you probably do it in the sound and you can't really see. So, but this is, if we don't have a clean hull bottom, it doesn't matter what else we do. Any other project, we have to keep the hull bottom clean. It's the number one thing, really, to keep the ship operating efficiently. Air lubrication system. So this one is near and dear to me, as this is my project. Maybe some of you, again, are familiar with this. It's where we can install a series of compressors in the ship to inject micro air bubbles under the ship, so the ship is riding essentially on a carpet of air. And from this, we can see savings in the realm of 5%, 6%, depending on the speed of the vessel. Okay, so what is my role? Again, in this larger decarbonization piece. I manage the upgrades for the fleet, including hydrodynamic upgrades, energy efficient lighting systems, and waste heat recovery projects. So for the lighting, we're taking all the old forms of lighting, fluorescents, halogen lamps, installing new LEDs, miles of new cabling for this, as well as new dimmer systems so that our ships, the lighting doesn't always have to operate at 100%. And then collaborating with marine engineering firms to perform feasibility studies to better utilize our waste heat from our diesel generators. If you're not already familiar, for our vessels at least, they're all diesel generator plants. It's not direct drive. We have anywhere from 4 to 6 generators producing electricity that then is distributed to the various consumers. And then finally, partnering with naval architecture firms to study all the possible modifications we can make for our hull forms. Hydrodynamic improvements. Like I mentioned, we can study bulbous bows and ducktail variations. This one was an exciting project. We looked at some of our older ships with hull forms that date back to the 90s. Now our ships have different operating profiles. When those ships were originally built, they were very high speed and designed for one speed, let's say, one set determined speed. And now we want to look at newer itineraries, which typically are a little bit slower, and how can we optimize our hull to operate over a wider range, instead of just saying, okay, we designed the ship for 18 knots. Now we say we want a ship that operates well from 12 to 20 knots. So what we did was we looked at the bulbous bows, newer style in the right, and this was work that we did with a nav arc firm out of Finland, where they did this feasibility study, and then I was fortunate, I traveled to Marin to kind of see these improvements through, as well as new ducktail designs for our ships. So really the ability to go from desktop to eventual implementation in a dry dock. Unfortunately, these modifications are really expensive, so we haven't done them yet, but they're there in case. So then we look at other items, from the smallest items on the hull. So in the center here, we have, can't really see in the photo, unfortunately, on the stern of the ducktail, on the very bottom of the ducktail, on the very stern, there's a flat plate, an interceptor plate. Some of you probably are familiar with these. However, we were working with a nav arc firm, and this just started that this naval architect was looking at a photo of our ship at speed, and he noticed the weight was a little bit funny. So just had 2 waves coming off the corners that didn't look right to him in his experience. So from this process, you know, we took it from okay, here's a photo of something that doesn't look optimal. To the CFD, to the tow tank in the center, and then finally to dry dock, where we just modified the shape of the interceptor. But from this, we see, 1 to 2% reduction in propulsion power. So very small modification, but this is how granular we go at Carnival to improve our efficiency. And then finally, again, looking at every piece, including new propeller designs for our new routes for the ships, as well as different types of bow thruster closures. This is one that thinking Thierry, one of the largest, if not the largest producer of cruise ships, partnered with Class Society DNV to study this style of bow thruster closure that we are also investigating, where the front half opens, or front 1/3 of the bow thruster closure opens, but when closed, it has this more smooth effect. All right, air lubrication system. So like I said, this one's a little bit closer to me, as this is one of my big programs for Carnival. And by show of hands, how many people are familiar with ALS? All right, most. All right, so we're working with Carnival Corporation has partnered with Silverstream out of the UK. They're, I think, the largest implementer at this point of air lubrication on vessels. And what we have is a series of boxes, like in the middle, that are installed in the flat bottom of the ship in a V form. And they produce, for this system, it's low pressure air, these micro bubbles to coat the bottom of the ship. So this is a project we just did in September. We had 190 people working on it just for this one project. And in 3 weeks, we cut 18 holes in the bottom of the ship, roughly, between these new air release units. And then we need to get the compressors in the side of the ship, so you cut holes in the side of the ship for that. So this is really a fun project, and one of the things that, at Carnival you can be part of. Hampton.
Thanks, Dan. So we'll go over to the other side of the house and talk about new builds and refurbishments. So our team, like Marine Operations, is quite large. We're almost 60 people across the company, and we're focused solely on the Carnival Cruise Line brand. And I like to think of us as a puzzle piece team. So I'll run through those, starting with new builds. Now, new builds within Carnival Cruise Line is actually not focused on the design and engineering of building ships. We have a separate corporate entity called Carnival Corporate Shipbuilding, based in Southampton, that handles the relationships with the shipyards. But at the brand level, our primary function is to ensure that we're going to receive a ship that meets our needs for the business, that meets our guests' needs, and meets our crew needs as well, so that we're able to operate the ship efficiently. On the other side, once we've built a ship, somebody's got to maintain it and continue to add new and exciting features as the ship goes through its life cycle. And that's the hotel refurbishment team, the team I've been a part of for the majority of my time at Carnival. So that group manages and oversees large-scale capital improvements to the ships. It could be anything from adding new bars and restaurants, building new cabins, renovating open deck spaces, in my case, adding water parks to our ships. Runs all over in terms of options. Supporting both new builds and hotel refurbishments is our interior design and architecture team. This is where we have our interior architects and designers that are responsible for bringing the concepts that are brought up by the product development team to life. They're going to design the spaces, space planning, they're going to come up with material finishes, so very much the look and feel of how our guests and our crew will experience areas on the ship. And then we have fleet planning, which is an area I've just moved into, and product development. This is kind of the idea center of everything. It was from product development that the idea arose to put a roller coaster on a cruise ship. And so Carnival was the first to do that. On the fleet planning side, we're tasked with looking at the long-term strategy for our fleet within Carnival Cruise Line. What new builds are coming in? What retirement schedules do we think we need to have for our existing ships? And in between, what are the right investments or capital improvements to the ships to keep them fresh and relevant? And then lastly, as Dan touched on, our dry docks are a very intense period of work that could be as little as 2 weeks to upwards of 2 months, depending on the scale of the project. So we have a team within new builds and refurbishments that's focused on dry dock planning and working across the business with all of the different teams to make sure that every hour of that period is optimized. So together, that's the new builds and refurbishments team. Now, focusing on hotel refurbishments, which is where I've spent the majority of my time at Carnival, I started as a project manager. When I joined, I had a couple different smaller projects where we were doing work on one of our Lido, adding poolside venues and bars, built a barbecue on board with cool wood-fired smokers. And then very quickly I got into more complicated projects, like building the water parks and converting large theater spaces from 3 decks to 2 decks. In 2021, I was promoted to director, and my focus then shifted from individual project management to looking at overall large-scale ship refurbishments. And part of that, as I mentioned, was piecing Carnival Radiance back together. That was a ship that was due to go into dry dock in the early part of 2020, and because of what happened in 2020, we stopped all of the work. But restarting that operation about a year and a half later took a lot of planning. We had to make sure all the materials we had intended to use were still ready to be used, and we had to sequence the contractors because we had limits as to how many people could work simultaneously. And then more recently, this summer, I transitioned over to fleet planning. So if I was to highlight a few projects, naturally, I have always been a big fan of our water parks. I've gotten very, very involved in those, and it's been a good application of the solid engineering background from Webb, but also to be able to apply that and have a lot of fun. The Liquid Lounge, which I'll share a little bit more what that entailed. And then more recently, we've had ships transferred from one of our sister brands, Costa, into Carnival. So on the waterworks projects, I've been involved with 8 ships where I managed the design and installation and commissioning of the water parks. In most of those cases, I was picking up designs that had been used on earlier ships in our fleet. But Carnival Splendor, which Dan showed a picture of earlier, is a ship that I actually got to start from a blank slate. We knew this location for the water park, and then beyond that, I had free reign to be able to add the slide features that I thought was best for the Australian market, which is where the ship was going. And although I've moved out of hotel refurbishment, I'm continuing to support future water park projects. And the pictures here are 3 ships that I was involved in. And one thing that's been important to me with each successive project, even though they were so-called repeat or copy-paste projects, I never copy and paste. So I always take time to see what was working well with the past projects or what didn't work well and try to make little tweaks to improve them. The Liquid Lounge is a space on our Sunshine class ships, and I was involved in 2019 and 2020/21 with Carnival Sunrise and Carnival Radiance, where we took the large main show lounge, which was a 3-deck space, and we basically demolished it and closed in the deck at the deck 4 level, or at the mid-level of the theater, and then added cabins below, and then rebuilt the theater on top. So this was a very ambitious project. We involved 74 tons of steel. In the renders here, you can see the red highlights are the steel and outfitting that we removed to make way for the deck insert, and in the green render on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see all of the new steel that was installed. This was a very aggressive timeline. We had about 40 days out of service total for the ship. That meant from the last guest off until the first guests were back on. And for the timeline to be able to not only install the steel, but also to re-outfit the space and then reinstall the technical systems for entertainment, we only had about 25 days to do the steel portion of the project. And the other cool thing, unbeknownst to Carnival, was this project allowed me to merge 2 of my lifetime passions. I've always been very involved in technical theater and lighting design. So I get theater people, which can sometimes be different to work with. So we were able to speak a similar language. And then, of course, ship design. From the time I was very, very young, I always wanted to work with passenger ships. So this was a nice, challenging project to do. And then, most recently, Carnival has had 3 ships transferred from our sister brand Costa into the fleet. And that was the first time Carnival Cruise Line had ever received ships that were operating for another brand. In Carnival's history, we've sent ships to other brands, but we never had to be on the receiving end of that. And so I was tasked with working across all segments of the business. So beyond the normal suspects that I would work with in hotel refurbishment, I had to work with finance and crewing, and had to work with the sister brand on arranging the handovers of the ships and the very official legal documents that went along with that. And then the transformations so that those ships could be prepared for the markets they were going to work in. And then the startups of those ships. So in many ways, these transfers were kind of the mashup of a new build and the mashup of a refurbishment together, the best and worst of both. In the pictures here, you can see Carnival Venezia here on the left-hand side of the slide, and then Carnival Luminosa on the right-hand side. And the freshman class know Carnival Venezia quite well, because we spent the day together a couple weeks ago going all over Carnival Venezia. So that's a ship that's based here in Manhattan. They'll head down to Port Canaveral for the winter. They're snowbirding this year, but then they'll be back in the spring. So then from there, what's next? Well, that's kind of my new role, is looking at the long-term planning for our fleet, understanding the new builds that are coming in, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of our existing fleet, where we can make improvements, which ships have longer-term strategic value, and which ships will start to exit the fleet as we bring in newer ships. And it's been really cool because it's been an opportunity to get more into the analytics side of the business, as opposed to just working with business owners who say they need something and then hotel refurbishment supporting those needs. So that's a little bit of a taste of roles within marine operations and new builds at Carnival. And now I'll ask Carrie to talk to you about how to come and join the fun.
I feel like I get the easiest part of the presentation. Hopefully you're feeling very inspired and now you want to work for us. So let's talk about how you get there. We have a couple of early talent opportunities for students, in particular at Webb. So I want to tell you, we're bringing back our winter internship program, which I know existed in the past, pre-COVID. So we do have 2 opportunities this upcoming winter. With our refurbishments team and our new builds team. So I put them up here. I want to just share a little bit about the objectives and things that we're looking for. This QR code does go straight to the application. So if you're feeling really excited about it, you can scan it now, put your application in right away. Otherwise, I'll have it emailed out to all of you as well. But as you can see, we've got the new ship design and development opportunity here for you all to look at. A little bit of everything that Hampton has been talking about in this project. And the other one we have is with hotel refurbishment, project development, and execution. So this QR code will go to this application, so take it if you want it real quick. I'll talk in a minute about what makes our internship opportunities special, but I also want to mention that we have a summer internship program as well. I understand this doesn't quite line up with the curriculum here at Webb, but just in case this is something that you're interested in, I want to share we have 29 different departments hosting interns in 2025. These applications are open now, and you can see there's lots of different departments, but I think what's most interesting for this group is going to be the energy efficiency engineering internship. So that is more on Dan's side of things this summer, obviously working on that decarbonization initiatives too. Qualifications for both of these internships are going to be the same, winter and summer. So you do have to be enrolled in school, so you cannot be graduating. 3.0 GPA is the minimum. Any major, which I know there's not many here, but you are all welcome to apply. And hopefully you want to have a good time. Our goal is to bring in people who want to be at Carnival for the long term and want to have a fun career. Hopefully everything you've heard from Dan and Hampton have encouraged you to think about what kind of fun we have at Carnival, and I think we do have a really good time. So let's talk about some of the benefits of being an intern at Carnival, whether this is in the winter or in the summer. And these are pictures of real-life interns that we've had at Carnival, so they're not fake. We didn't have people posing for this. This is real. I think what makes our internship programs really special, number one, they are project-based. So you're not going to get people coffee. You're not doing any of that typical intern stuff that sometimes is portrayed. You are doing actual projects with the teams, and our teams do a great job of putting you in charge of something and letting you see that to fruition all the way to the end. That's true for summer, and it will be true for winter as well. You get to work with a lot of different people, lots of mentorship and networking opportunities within the company. And then, of course, we throw in a lot of fun stuff too. So we take you on facility tours. This is our FOC, Fleet Operations Center, at headquarters in Miami. We've been on ships, obviously. We do skills-based workshops and help you kind of learn your professional development, planning for the next steps, planning for full-time opportunities at Carnival as well. And then you'll also see a picture here with our interns, with Christine Duffy, who is the president of Carnival Cruise Line. These are lunch and learns and fireside chats that we do with our interns. This last summer's cohort got to meet Josh Weinstein, who is the CEO of Carnival Corporation. So, and that is one-on-one interns with these VPs and above. I don't know of very many companies that offer that to students. They got to just ask questions of these people, which I think is really incredible. So lots of fun things that we have going on for the interns. Excuse me. And then let's talk about full-time employment too. So post-internship, we have lots of great opportunities. Obviously, it takes a village to make Carnival work. We have lots of shipboard opportunities, but also an entire shoreside team that makes everything happen for the shipboard. So I put on some benefits for you just to know what we're looking at when you're an employee at Carnival. I think the number one question is the ship cruise benefits. We do get those, so we can talk more about that if you have questions about that. If you like to travel, that's a really great benefit to use. But of course, we have all kinds of land-based opportunities, obviously in hotels and refurbishments, new builds, technical and marine operations, and then so many other areas as well. I would recommend following our social media so you can see what kind of stuff we have going on at any given time at Carnival, and we do day in the life videos pretty frequently. And then our jobs website is here as well. That's the best place to find openings. We don't work on any certain cycles except for the internship programs. So if you're looking for full-time, visit the website, set up some job alerts, and apply when you see those jobs are posted. And I also put my information here too, so if you'd like to follow me on LinkedIn, I try to share as many early talent opportunities as I can. And then if you have questions, I'm available too. I will be back here at 12:20, so if you want to chat about it, grab some swag, I will be here. And I think we just get to do question and answer now, so I'll bring you up to back up.